Hi, today is November 1st, Sunday. Recovering from Halloween. I did watch Motel Hell last night. So let's review the news. There's a bunch of interesting articles that I've discovered in the New York Times, no Wall Street Journal on Sunday, Boston Globe, and the New York Times. Article about how you can get the most that you can from LinkedIn. Two book recommendations, one called The Cancer Journals by Audre Lourde, which talks about a 14-year battle with breast cancer from her diagnosis right through her feminist denouncement of post-mastectomy prosthesis. So I love to hear that inside story of something, as profound as that. Looking at the light here. And one called Frankissstein, a love story by Jeannette Winterson. And I guess it's a riff off of the Frankenstein. Steve Martin had an interview here. And boy, what a smart guy. Talked about some of the different books that he really likes and just a really well-read guy. Books he recommends, that he listens to audiobooks a lot when he's riding his bike. And he really recommended a book called Future Crimes by Mark Goodman. And he says that if you want to be modern, you have to read that book. Article about older women's co-housing project group that got together and they wrote down their vision and their purpose for their group, their guiding principles, such as counter ageist stereotypes, maintain balance between privacy and community, no men, just women. Interesting. I love how they got together and wrote out their purpose and their vision and their goals. And something about the Purge movies and kind of what that means for today's time. And I like how they say here, B movies often tell more honest stories than Oscar bait. And I love those bad movies. Something about being a visionary on the inside of this person's house, the interior design. So the outside looks like a very traditional, typical house, but inside it's super colorful, super fancy. And that's the way I think we are. If you have a good vision for your life, you look like a typical person on the outside, but you've got that plan simmering inside all the time. We lost Sean Connery, James Bond. Great actor. And they were comparing him with Cary Grant, that they both had, they call it charm, but actually this person was saying that charm is actually a lot of skills required to give off that vibe of having charm. Kind of interesting to be charming. And I didn't realize how poor he was when being a boy in Scotland in the slums, basically having porridge and potatoes. His crib in 1930 was a bottom drawer of a dresser. He even thought into his 60s, he said that, hey, taking a bath, that's a special thing. He always remembered the value of money, and he was very generous, giving to Scotland and people that were poor. He was a passionate golfer. Didn't know that. And he founded a Scottish International Education Trust to help Scots get an education. Something about teaching ourselves how to become better ancestors. Thought that was an interesting take. Clipped a few recipes I want to try out. One is Somen noodles with poached egg, bok choy, and mushrooms. Something called mapu ragu, which is like a pork with rice in a fancy way. Simple roast chicken with greens and bonus stock. Article called Strangers in a Room Hammering Out Climate Solutions Together. I love the idea of brainstorming and getting back to working together on important problems, not against each other. There's an author, Robert Putnam, who is bullish on America. His book is called The Upswing: How America Came Together a Century Ago and How We Can Do It Again. Robert D. Putnam. He also wrote the book Bowling Alone. Sounds like it's a good positive outlook, which I like. An article called Lessons in Democracy. Some of the lessons about democracy that this administration has taught us. One of the lines here in this article I really like, it says, democracy is like Tinkerbell. If enough people stop believing in it, it expires. Interesting. That's kind of like our purpose and our mission, right? And our pursuit of goals. A little special on Dolly Parton, which I always respected her long career. And she always just seemed to have that same fun vibe, you know, just a positive, really positive vibe. And she said that she's a singer, an entertainer, and a businesswoman. But if she had to choose one thing, she'd be a songwriter, because everything starts with the song for her. She just wrote a book called Dolly Parton Songteller, My Life and Lyrics. And she just describes every single song she wrote. She said even as a child, she used to love to rhyme, and she'd walk through graveyards and try to rhyme people's names. She always was interested in stories, you know, looking at these gravestones and what's the story behind that person. And she said she's always creative on the tour bus, in the bathtub, anywhere. She's always has her guitar and tape recorder near her. In fact, she says that going through old tapes, that she thinks Jolene and the hit song I Will Always Love You were probably written on the same day because they were back to back on one tape. Pretty interesting. Here's a project I want to look up. I was checking out their website a bit by a Somerville, Massachusetts resident, Michelle Wax, and the thing is called American Happiness. So it's a documentary, 500 people in all 50 states, and she's a 30-year-old woman trying to understand positive mindsets and happiness. Love that. A new author named Susie Yang wrote a very dark and absorbing debut novel called White Ivy. So that sounds good. I love the Bibliophiles part of the Boston Globe, where they basically interview an author or poet and ask them what's on their nightstand. What are they reading? And this lady says, this lady is Maira Kalman, illustrator and author. And she loves Agatha Christie murder mysteries. Which, as I said before, I want to get into reading some mysteries. And I guess Agatha Christie is the queen of it. Here's a funny article about a guy who was listening to classical music on the election in 2016 and how it just made kind of a theme for the whole administration for the last 3.5 years. And the piece was Brahms' piano concerto. So he just mixes this composition with the last 4 years. Kind of interesting. Here's a famous documentarian, Frederick Wiseman. Interview with him. Always curious what he has to say. He's just did a thing about Boston City Hall, and he did a very famous documentary about the men in the prison for the criminally insane in Massachusetts, where they documented a lot of the abuse that was going on there. It was groundbreaking back in the 60s. And this article is in the New York Times called Parents Stress Mingles with Joy of Side Effect of Novel Quality Time. So trying to have quality time, but having all these stressors. There was a advertising supplement that went with the, I think the Globe, and it was all about aging, healthy aging. 5 myths about aging, misunderstood ideas about aging and the truth behind them. So this was pretty interesting. Having that positive approach will help you live longer and healthier, happier. This says studies show that aging well is possible when aided by a positive attitude, a sense of independence, and a purpose in life, and to continue social engagement. You read my book, All the Hats We Wear, and follow all its advice. Here's another article in that same supplement about positive aging, and I guess the term successful aging is credited to Robert J. Havighurst, who was an expert on human development and aging in 1961. Successful aging involves being productive, mentally fit, and most importantly, leading a meaningful life. And of course, in my coaching, I help people with their life purpose and living a life of meaning. There can be nothing more rewarding. And in fact, the motto for the company, my core values are time management skills to help you become joyful, productive, and fulfilled. They talk about achieving goals, have achievable goals, be precise. So eat more vegetables is a goal, but it's very vague. You want to eat a serving of vegetables 2 meals a day. That's clear. And in my system, that would be a habit goal. I have 4 different types of goals in my book: habit goals, deadline goals, visionary goals, and sky's the limit goals. You can read about that in my free book on my website, allthehatswewear.com. So being happy and being fulfilled can increase our lives by 4 to 10 years, according to this study. They also did a study where they analyzed diary entries of Catholic nuns in their 20s. And depending on how much, what level of happiness they had in their entries, correctly dictated how long they would live. Interesting. So those were some of the inspirational stories and things that were creative in today's newspaper. Hope you have a great day. If you want to find out more information about my coaching and my presentations and courses and my book, blah, 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 check out allthehatswewear.com. Thanks. Have a great day.